Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I've been the shop foreman at this urban car dealership for over a decade now. It's a job I stumbled into after years of tinkering with engines in my garage and helping out friends with their car troubles. Never thought I'd end up running a whole service department, but here I am. The job's got its ups and downs, but I take pride in keeping our customers' vehicles in top shape. One thing I'm real strict about is how we handle test drives. These are other people's cars we're dealing with after all. I make sure all my techs know to be extra careful out there. So there I was, going through some paperwork in my office when I got a call from one of my best technicians. He sounded shaken up, which was unusual for him. He told me about a situation where a lady had plowed into him during a test drive. I asked if he was okay, and he assured me he was fine but explained that the customer's car had significant damage to the right front fender and door. I told him to stay put and that I'd be right there since I was just a block away. I hurried over to the scene and let me tell you, it was a mess. This lady had tried to make a left turn from the right lane. Can you believe it? And instead of pulling over to the side like a normal person, she just parked her car in the left lane blocking traffic. As I approached, I could see my tech looking stressed, standing next to the damaged customer car. The other driver, a middle-aged woman with a Karen haircut, was pacing back and forth, talking loudly on her phone. I walked up to my tech first, making sure he was really okay. Then I turned to the woman who had just hung up her call. I asked her to explain what happened. She claimed that she was just trying to get to her appointment and that our driver came out of nowhere, insisting he should have seen her turning. When I questioned her about turning from the right lane, she said she had her turn signal on and that he should have been more careful. I could feel a headache coming on. This lady was clearly not going to take responsibility for her actions. Then she dropped a bombshell, revealing that she was retired from the New York Police Department. She asked what I thought about that, looking at me expectantly as if this information was supposed to change everything. I don't know if it was my demeanor or what, but she seemed to think I was some kind of authority figure. Little did she know I couldn't care less about her former job or her attempt at intimidation. I simply responded that people tell me lots of things, most of which are meaningless. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, clearly not expecting that response. I then politely told her to have a nice day and informed her that the police would be there soon. I turned back to my tech, ignoring her spluttering behind me. We started documenting the damage to the customer's car while waiting for the police to arrive. When they did show up, Karen immediately launched into her story, emphasizing her former job and trying to pin the blame on my technician. But the officers weren't buying it. They took statements from everyone, including a couple of witnesses who had stopped. One witness told the officer that they saw the whole thing, confirming that the lady had tried to turn left from the right lane and that our driver didn't have a chance to avoid her. Karen's face turned an interesting shade of red as she realized her plan was falling apart. The officers issued her a citation for an illegal turn and causing an accident. Karen stormed over to me one last time. She angrily said this wasn't over, boasting about her connections and threatening to make sure our shop would pay for this. I couldn't help but chuckle at her empty threats. I calmly informed her that the only thing she'd be paying for was the damage to our customer's car and her traffic violation, and wished her a nice day. She huffed and puffed but eventually got in her car and drove off, leaving us to deal with the aftermath. I turned to my tech. He apologized about the situation with the customer's car. I reassured him, saying he did everything right and that we'd take care of the repairs and make sure the customer was happy. Just another day in the life of a shop foreman, I guess. When our company landed a big contract with an airline, they wanted us to upgrade their booking system, and I was picked to fly out and oversee the implementation. The day of my flight, I arrived at the airport early. I always do this. It's a habit from my days as a broke college student when I'd volunteered to be bumped from overbooked flights for vouchers. Today, though, I was flying first class, courtesy of the airline we were working with. I boarded the plane and settled into my seat, looking forward to a peaceful flight. That's when I heard raised voices from the aisle. I looked up to see a middle-aged guy glaring at me with a young woman, probably his daughter, standing behind him. The man accused me of being in their seats. I tried to explain that there must be a mistake, as this was my assigned seat. He insisted that he and his daughter always fly first class and these were their usual seats. I attempted to show him my boarding pass, but he refused to look at it. The man then claimed that it didn't matter what my ticket said, stating that they always sit in these seats when they fly. He accused me of somehow getting an upgrade. I calmly suggested that he check with the flight attendant, but this only seemed to anger him more. The guy's face was turning red, and his daughter looked mortified. She pleaded with her father to ask the flight attendant for clarification, but he refused. He then accused me of smooth-talking my way into an upgrade and threatened me. Before I could react, he took a swing at me. I managed to duck, but his fist grazed my cheek. The other passengers gasped, and a flight attendant came running. She demanded that the man calm down immediately. The man continued to accuse me of stealing their seats while I defended myself, explaining that this was my assigned seat. The flight attendant checked both our tickets and confirmed I was in the right seat. She informed the man that his daughter had been assigned a seat in economy due to overbooking. The flight attendant then instructed the man and his daughter to take their assigned seats, promising to sort out the issue after landing. The man stormed off, yelling threats. His daughter apologized profusely before following him. The rest of the flight was tense, to say the least. I could feel the man's glare burning into the back of my seat the whole time. When we landed, I was first off the plane. As I walked down the steps to the tarmac, I saw a group of security officers waiting. I figured they were there for the angry dad, so I stepped aside to watch. Sure enough, as soon as the man set foot on the tarmac, 2 officers grabbed him. They informed him that he was under arrest for assault. The man demanded to know if they knew who he was. It turned out that I wasn't the only one who'd called for security. The flight attendant and several passengers had reported the incident too. As they cuffed him, his daughter burst into tears, berating her father for not calming down and expressing her embarrassment. The man struggled and yelled as they led him away, causing quite a scene. Other passengers were filming with their phones, and I couldn't help but feel a little satisfied. As I walked to the terminal, the airline's customer service manager approached me. She apologized for what happened and offered compensation for the trouble. I tried to decline, saying it wasn't necessary and that I was just glad it was over. However, she insisted, offering me lifetime platinum status with their airline. All this drama had somehow landed me the holy grail of frequent flyer perks. After all, you never know when the next entitled passenger might lose their cool over a seat mix-up. I'm not exactly what you'd call an outdoorsy type. The idea of mowing the lawn every week wasn't exactly thrilling, but I knew it came with the territory. I didn't want to be that neighbor with the overgrown yard that everyone gossips about at block parties. So, I dutifully mowed my lawn every weekend, rain or shine. Things were going pretty smoothly until this summer. It started with a nagging pain in my back. I ignored it at first, thinking it was just from sitting too long at my desk job. But it got worse, and before I knew it, I was in and out of doctor's appointments, physical therapy sessions, and even had a minor surgery. Needless to say, lawn care took a backseat to my health issues. By the time I was feeling better, my once tidy yard looked like a small jungle. I knew I needed help, so I decided to hire a lawn care service. That's when the real trouble began. I found this company online that advertised one-time cuts. Perfect, I thought. I'll have them do a big cleanup, and then I can take over again. But when I called to schedule, they hit me with this 3-cut minimum nonsense. I should have hung up right then and there, but I was desperate. Big mistake. The day of the first cut arrives and this guy shows up, takes one look at my lawn, and starts shaking his head. The mower told me that my lawn was over 23 inches tall and it would cost extra. I was shocked and questioned if that could be right. He insisted he had the measurements and proceeded to pull out a tape measure. He started poking around in the tallest patches of grass. I couldn't even read the numbers on the thing, but he maintained his stance. He then informed me there would be a 500% markup for excessive height. I protested, asking if he couldn't just mow it anyway. He apologized, but said it was company policy. I was fuming, but I felt trapped by this stupid contract. So I told him I'd mow it myself, and they could come back for the next scheduled cut. I only managed to do the front yard before my back started acting up again, but I figured that would be enough. 2 weeks later, a different guy shows up and mows the whole lawn without a word about the height. Go figure. The next scheduled mowing day comes and goes with no one showing up. I report it and cancel through their app. But the very next day, someone shows up anyway. I cancel again, save screenshots, and think that's the end of it. Then, out of the blue, I get a message saying my mower is on the way. Mind you, we've been in a drought for a month, and my grass hasn't grown a lick. I'm seething at this point. When the mower arrives, I go out to talk to him. Turns out he's a really nice guy, just a contractor caught in the middle of this mess. He sympathized with my situation, telling me he gets this all the time. He promised to send a message to the company but warned me they probably wouldn't do anything about it. I felt bad for the guy, but I was done with this nonsense. An hour later, I get a message rescheduling me for the next day. That's when I decided to call and give them a piece of my mind. After getting bounced around, I finally end up talking to someone from their escalation team. The agent acknowledged my frustration but insisted that according to the contract, I still had one mowing left. I argued that my lawn didn't need mowing, asking if they would schedule snow removal in the middle of summer. The agent apologized but said they couldn't make exceptions. Frustrated, I sarcastically told him to schedule me for June 4th, 2047. The agent, confused, asked me to clarify the date. I repeated it, adding that I was sure I'd need my lawn mowed then. When the agent said they couldn't schedule that far in advance, I challenged why not, pointing out that the contract didn't specify when the cuts had to happen. I insisted that I had agreed to 3 cuts and wanted my last one on that far-off date. The agent asked for a moment to consult with support. I waited. When he returned, his tone had changed. He informed me that my service was fully cancelled and no one would be coming out. I thanked him, saying that was all I wanted. I may not have wanted to be that neighbor with the overgrown lawn, but I sure as heck wasn't going to be the neighbor who got pushed around by a lawn care company either. My wife and I had been together for nearly a decade, married for 5 of those years. We met in college, bonded over our shared love of indie music and obscure sci-fi novels. She was always close with her sister, but it never bothered me. I actually liked how tight-knit her family was. It was a nice contrast to my own more distant relatives. We'd always talked about having kids someday. We even had fun conversations about potential baby names over the years. I remember us laughing about some of the weirder options we came across online. We agreed we wanted a few kids, maybe 3 or 4. Our communication was great back then. We could talk about anything. When we found out she was pregnant, I was over the moon. Our first child together. I couldn't wait to start this new chapter of our lives. But something changed almost immediately. It was like a switch flipped in my wife's brain. Suddenly, all those names we'd discussed before, she hated them. Every single one. And instead of coming to me with new ideas, she was constantly on the phone with her sister, giggling about potential names. At first, I tried to be understanding. I figured it was just excitement about sharing the news with family. But as weeks went by and I was still completely shut out of the naming process, I started to get frustrated. One night, I decided to bring it up gently. I asked my wife if we could talk about baby names together, mentioning that I had some new ideas I wanted to share. She brushed me off, saying she already had a list going with her sister and told me not to worry about it. I tried to explain that while I understood she might want inspiration from her sister, I really wanted us to decide together since this was our daughter. My wife dismissed my concerns, telling me I was being dramatic and that it wasn't a big deal. I was hurt, but I tried to explain my feelings. I told her how left out I felt, how it seemed like her sister was more involved in naming our child than I was. My wife just brushed me off again. A few days later, her sister called me. She told me to know my place and stay in my lane, insisting that this was between her and my wife. I was shocked at her words. Feeling at a loss, I suggested couples counseling to my wife, hoping a neutral third party could help us communicate better. My wife asked why I was being so dramatic. I explained that I just wanted to be part of naming our daughter and for us to work together on this. She responded by saying her sister had every right to have a say in naming her first niece, that it was important to include her, and that I didn't have a right to insist on being a part of it. I was furious, but I knew blowing up wouldn't help. I talked to a therapist on my own, trying to find better ways to communicate. But every attempt I made to gently bring up the subject was shut down. Finally, after weeks of frustration, I confronted her again. I asked her why she didn't want me to be part of this process and if she was feeling pressured by her sister. My wife said that she got to decide who names our baby, that she wanted her sister involved and not me, and that I should try to be understanding because it wasn't a big deal. In frustration, I sarcastically asked when her sister would start paying child support if she had more right to name our child than I did. My wife reacted angrily, calling me ridiculous and petty. She said it was crazy to think her sister should pay child support since the baby was our daughter, not her sister's. She told me to stop being such a bum about the situation. In that moment, I realized how far we drifted apart. This wasn't the woman I'd married, the woman who valued our partnership, our teamwork. I took a deep breath and made a decision. I agreed that she was right about the baby being our daughter, which was exactly why I was going to be part of her life, including choosing her name. I told my wife that if she couldn't accept that, we might need to rethink our entire situation. My wife asked me what I meant by that. I explained that unless she was willing to go to counseling and work on our communication, I would be speaking to a lawyer about my parental rights. I assured her that I loved her, but I wouldn't be pushed out of my child's life before she was even born. The look on her face told me she finally understood how serious this was. It wasn't just about a name anymore. It was about respect, partnership, and what kind of parents we were going to be. My wife hesitantly admitted that she hadn't realized how much this meant to me. I emphasized that it meant everything, and that our daughter was ours, not her sister's. There was a long pause before she nodded slowly. She agreed to try counseling and suggested we could look at my name ideas. Our daughter deserved parents who could work together, and I was determined to make that happen, with or without her sister's input. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.